When I first saw him, he smelled like an omega. And like a curse. That was my first thought when the stranger stepped off the creaking wagon into the heart of our half-dead village. Broad-shouldered, dressed in the weather-worn leathers of a hunter, he carried himself as if no shadow could unsettle him. That alone made him an anomaly. Because here, on the border of the forest, shadows didn't just unsettle you, they devoured you whole. The villagers had gathered, as they always did when someone foolish enough to visit arrived. Wrinkled faces peered from shuttered windows. Children dragged inside by stern hands, dogs whining low in their throats. Nobody greeted him. Nobody ever did, not in a place where most greetings turned into farewells. He looked around, brows drawn together, as though expecting some form of hospitality. He'd get none. Not here. Not with the forest watching. I leaned back on the warped steps of my porch, chewing on a sprig of bitter grass I'd plucked earlier. My house wasn't much, a roof patched too many times, a railing half splintered, but it gave me the best view of the outsider. The hunter's gaze swept the square sharp as a blade, until the oldest villager, Joran, limped forward. His voice was gravel wrapped in disdain. "If you want to go into the forest," Joran said, "you'll take him." His gnarled finger lifted and pointed, straight at me. I could practically hear the collective sigh of relief behind every shudder. If I went, it meant none of them had to. The hunter's eyes followed the line of Joran's hand, and landed on me. For a moment, his face betrayed nothing. Then his nostrils flared. His jaw tightened. Recognition, instinctive, primal. Yes. He could smell it. That telltale scent. The mark of an omega. Only, it wasn't so simple. Because a heartbeat later, the scent was gone, buried deep within me, smothered by something older, darker. I watched confusion flicker in his expression. I enjoyed that flicker. He approached, boots crunching on gravel, stopping at the foot of my porch. Up close his presence was heavier, like standing too near a thunderstorm. "You're my guide?" His voice was steady, deep, carrying a faint rasp that might have been weariness, or irritation. I tilted my head, let the sprig of grass roll between my teeth and answered, "No. I'm your nightmare. But guiding pays better." For the first time, his mouth twitched, like he was caught between annoyance and laughter. Most men avoided my sarcasm. He didn't. Interesting. Around us, villagers muttered like the forest wind itself. "It won't last," someone whispered. "The forest will take him too." The hunter ignored them, keeping his eyes on me. I hated that. Being seen so directly, so clearly. His gaze didn't slip away like the others. He wasn't afraid. That was unusual. Dangerous. "You have a name?" he asked. "Depends who's asking," I replied lazily. "Hunter Corvin." He said it like it should mean something to me. Maybe it did. I pretended otherwise. I spat the sprig of grass into the dirt, stood and stretched. My joints ached from sitting too long, but I didn't let it show. "Rohan," I said finally. "If you're looking to die in the forest, I can draw you a map. If you're looking to get lost, I can walk with you. Either way, your odds are the same." He didn't flinch. Instead, his lips curved faintly. "Then walk with me." The audacity, the calm. Any other hunter would have balked, would have begged for reassurance or bolstered his courage with false bravado. Corvin simply accepted the terms, as though my sarcasm were a fact carved in stone. Behind him, Joran shook his head and spat. "Fool. The forest eats men like you." Corvin glanced at the old man only once, then back to me. "Then let's hope I've got tough bones." Something in my chest shifted at that, some tight knot pulled by invisible strings. I masked it with another smirk. "Well," I said, stepping off the porch and brushing past him, "if you're so eager to be swallowed whole, best we start before the forest changes its mind." His scent caught me then, close and sharp, alpha, strong, threaded with iron and pine. For an instant, it mixed with mine. Clashing, tangling. My skin prickled. My instincts stirred. And just like that, I buried it. Shut it down. Smothered it beneath the old weight coiled inside me. The spirit that made me more than an omega. The curse that made me untouchable. He blinked, subtle, like the scent had slipped from his senses. Confusion flickered again. Good. Let him wonder. Let him doubt. I started down the narrow path that wound from the village into the shadows beyond. He followed, his footsteps steady, his presence pressing against my back like a second heartbeat. Behind us, the villagers closed their shutters tighter. None of them believed we'd return. I couldn't blame them. Because I was Rohan, the only one who still walked a cursed forest. And Corvin was the first alpha who didn't look away. The forest didn't wait for us. It never did. By the time Corvin and I left the crumbling fences of the village behind, the mist had already begun to creep low across the ground, curling like pale fingers around our boots. The air thickened, wet, heavy with rot and pine, a taste of metal lingering on the tongue. The first breath was enough to remind him this wasn't a place meant for living men. He didn't comment. Hunters rarely did. They preferred to look brave, like silence could protect them. But silence is a lie. I moved easily, the way I always did here. The path shifted underfoot, damp moss swallowing any sound. My steps didn't leave prints. They never did. I heard him pause behind me once, long enough to notice. "You're quiet," he muttered finally. His voice was low, wary. I didn't turn. "Would you rather I stomp?" He grunted. "Most people leave a trail. You don't. Most people get eaten." But I didn't bother saying that. Instead, I let the corner of my mouth tilt in amusement. Maybe the forest likes me. There was a pause, heavier than the mist. Then, under his breath, he muttered, "Or maybe it's swallowing you whole." Smart man. His thoughts pressed against me, even when he didn't speak. I could feel his gaze on my back, assessing, dissecting, as though he could pin me down if he just stared hard enough. But the forest and I had an agreement. I could never be pinned. He tried again after a while. "Why you? Why me? What? Why are you the only one who goes in here?" "Because I come back." It was the truth, though not the whole of it. My words hung in the mist like something half-rotten. He didn't push. Not yet. The further we went, the thicker the air grew. My lungs adjusted to the weight, but I knew he felt it. His breathing was measured, deliberate, like he was refusing to give the forest the satisfaction of hearing him strain. And then it happened. The shift in him. I smelled it before he spoke, the sharp tang of alpha irritation. He was circling the thought like a wolf around a trap, and finally he gave in. "You smell." He hesitated, as if unsure whether to finish. I glanced back, brow raised. "Dangerous? Handsome?" "Do continue." His jaw flexed. Like an omega. I tilted my head, let the words settle between us. The truth in them was undeniable. For a second, just one. My scent slipped free, sharp and undeniable, hitting him squarely in the chest. His pupils widened, his shoulders stiffened. Instinct. Pure, involuntary instinct. And then it was gone. Pulled back, drowned beneath the weight that coils inside me, older than his bloodline. He blinked, confusion flashing across his features. "It's there, then it's not. That's not normal." I smirked. "And here I thought you alphas loved a good challenge." His voice dropped, more a growl than words. "That kind of teasing will drive an alpha insane." I let out a quiet laugh, sharp in the mist. "Let's find out, shall we?" That earned me silence again. But not the kind that ends a conversation. His silence was heavy, restless. My sarcasm hadn't driven him off. It had rooted him deeper. Interesting. We pressed on. The trees grew taller, their branches thick enough to block what little sunlight fought through the clouds. Moss clung to everything, damp and slick, turning each trunk into a green corpse. I could feel the forest shifting around us, restless. The weight of its gaze pressed harder against my skin, prickling the back of my neck. It wanted him. Tested him. But it was still watching me. Always me. When the first sound came, I almost smiled. A voice. Soft, winding, familiar in the worst way. "Rohan." The mist carried it, threading through the trees like smoke. My chest tightened, but I didn't stop walking. I never stopped. Behind me, I heard Corvin's steps falter. "Did you hear that?" "Depends," I said, keeping my tone even. "Did you hear your name?" His silence told me everything. The forest always knows what name to use. The deeper we went, the darker it grew. Light thinned to nothing beneath the canopy, the trees rising like pillars carved by giants, their roots as thick as houses. The air was damp and close, moss crawling over bark like a second skin. Every breath tasted of earth too long buried. Corvin slowed behind me, his boots scuffing against roots that shifted when you weren't looking. He muttered something under his breath, sharp and low, as if the forest could hear. Maybe it could. The path twisted, then vanished. He swore softly. "It was here." "It was never here," I said without turning. He caught up in 2 long strides, his irritation brushing against me like static. Don't play games. I've tracked beasts through blizzards. I know what a trail looks like. I glanced back, let my smirk cut through the mist. And what does this look like to you? His mouth pressed into a line. Around us, the trees leaned closer, their branches creaking like bones. The forest shifts when it wants to. It was shifting now. I walked on, unhurried, the ground folding and unfolding beneath my feet. I didn't need eyes here. The forest was a map I'd memorized long ago, etched not on parchment but beneath my skin. Behind me his breathing quickened. Then came the sound, a sudden crack. The earth split beneath his boots, a fissure yawning wide, swallowing moss and stone. Corvin! He lurched back, but too late. The ground caved under him, roots snapping like whips. He grabbed for a branch, his weight dragging him down. I didn't think. I moved. One heartbeat, I was above him. The next, my hand closed around his arm, my body balanced on the trembling edge as though gravity had forgotten me. My movements were too quick, too easy. Fluid in a way no humans should be. His eyes widened, not from the fall but from me. I pulled him up, steady, until his boots found solid ground again. His chest rose and fell in sharp bursts. You're... His voice broke off, then came back rough. You're not... human... I tilted my head, my grip still firm on his wrist. And you'd have come into this forest with someone who was... His lips parted, a retort forming, but no sound followed. His pulse thrummed under my fingers. Warm. Alive. For a moment too long I didn't let go. When I did, he rubbed at his arm, frowning, though his gaze lingered on me as if trying to decipher something carved in stone. We walked on in silence, though the forest was anything but. Whispers curled between the trees. Voices pressing against our ears. They hissed names, his, mine, sliding into the spaces between heartbeats. He flinched once, when the sound came too close. I didn't. The forest had been calling my name for years. It was almost a relief when we found the first trace of the missing. A branch sagged low, its bark torn where something had struggled. At its base lay an iron collar, cracked open, rust gnawing at the metal. Beside it, the dirt was stained dark, long since dried. The smell clung still, sharp and bitter. Corvin crouched, running a hand over the collar. His face hardened. Wolves. Were, I corrected softly. He looked up, and for the first time, I saw not just a hunter, but something raw. Anger, grief, maybe both. The air thickened between us. My gaze caught his, and for reasons I didn't bother naming, I didn't look away. He held me there. His eyes, dark as storm clouds, searched mine like he expected them to give something up. Maybe they did. The forest's whispers hushed, as though even it wanted to hear what might happen next. And for the first time, I let him see me. Really see me. Long enough for his instincts to stir, for the heat of his stare to press against my skin like claws. Almost Hungry. Almost Human. I smiled then, slow, deliberate, and kept walking. The forest slept uneasily. We found a clearing just wide enough for a fire, and even then the flames seemed reluctant, sputtering as if afraid of the trees looming around us. Their trunks leaned close, shadows curling like claws across the ground. The air was thick, too heavy for breath, too tight for words. I sat closer to Corvin than the fire demanded. He noticed. Of course he did. His posture stiffened, broad shoulders squared as though he could create space without moving. I didn't shift away. Heat rolled off him, steady, grounding, more real than the fire. I soaked it in like a thief. Let him think I needed warmth. Let him think anything he wanted, so long as I could stay close enough to catch the steady beat of his pulse. You're bold, he said finally, voice low, threaded with suspicion. I let my smirk tilt. Bold? Sitting near an alpha? I'd call that survival. Firewood burns out. Alphas last longer. His exhale was half a laugh, half a growl. The sound stirred the shadows between us. For a while neither of us spoke. The forest filled the silence with its restless breath, the crack of bark, the hiss of something moving just beyond the firelight. He fed the flames with another branch, his gaze fixed on the blaze. When he finally spoke again, it wasn't to me. Not really. I always thought pairing was sacred, he murmured. His eyes reflected the fire, sharp and unreadable. Two halves bound as one, but lately, I wonder if it's just another way to lose yourself. The confession hung there, heavier than the smoke, I tilted my head, studying him. Lose yourself? He didn't look at me. A mark, a bond, it takes your choices. You belong to someone else whether you meant to or not. I've seen alphas crumble under it. I've seen omegas vanish inside it. His jaw tightened. I don't want to be consumed. I laughed, low and sharp. Some people don't need a mark to vanish. They lose themselves just fine without it. That earned me his attention. He turned. Firelight catching on the hard lines of his face. For the first time since we entered the forest, I had his full focus. And it was a weight all its own. You're cynical. I'm alive, I corrected. Cynicism is just breathing with style. He huffed, shaking his head. You sound like you've seen too much. I sound like I've seen enough. The fire crackled between us. He shifted, leaning forward, his hand brushing against mine as he steadied a log. A touch. Barely anything. Skin against skin for the space of a breath. But it wasn't simple. It never is. Heat sparked, not the fire's, not his, but something older, coiled inside me. It surged through the contact, up my arm, into my chest. For one heartbeat I was afraid he would feel it too, that the secret caged within me would burn through his skin. He flinched, just slightly, his gaze darting down to where our hands almost touched. His pulse stuttered in the air between us. Then he drew his hand back, careful, deliberate. I leaned closer, my voice dropping. What's wrong? Afraid your grand noble alpha instincts might betray you? His lips twitched. You make it sound like a curse. Isn't it? The tension cracked, if only a little. His laugh was quiet, reluctant. You really don't let up, do you? POS, I said, dragging the word slowly, savoring it. It's hereditary. All alphas have it. You strut, you brood, you confess under the stars. It's in your blood. He snorted, the sound startlingly human, almost warm. You're insufferable. And yet here you sit, suffering. The corner of his mouth curved before he could stop it. For a moment, we weren't two strangers pressed together by a cursed forest. We were just two men sharing heat in the dark. The moment stretched, until the fire popped, throwing sparks into the night. My gaze flicked upward, and his followed. That was when he saw. My control slipped. The power inside me stirred, spilling past the careful walls I'd built. My eyes burned, the forest answering in kind, shadows deepening as if to bow to me. Corvin froze. His breath caught. The glow in my gaze reflected in his, not wolfish, not human. Something older. Something bound. I didn't look away. I couldn't. And for the first time he understood, I was not the thing he thought he was hunting. I was the thing the forest had sent him to find. Morning broke cold and thin. Frost clinging to the grass like shards of glass. The forest never looked gentler by daylight, it only revealed more of its teeth. The branches above were stiff with ice, bending under the weight, whispering low when the wind touched them. The air was clear, sharp, yet it pressed down heavier than the night before. Corvin's stare was heavier still. He hadn't slept much. I'd heard him shifting by the dying fire, restless, waiting for dawn. Now, as the sun fought its way through the canopy, he fixed his eyes on me like a man demanding answers. You're going to tell me, he said. No question, just command. I raised a brow, stretching as though the cold hadn't seeped into my bones. Good morning to you too. Don't. His tone cut sharper than the frost. Last night, your eyes. That wasn't the forest playing tricks. That was you. I looked away, tracing the jagged outline of frost along a route. The forest shifted around us, uneasy. It didn't like when truths came too easily. Neither did I. He took a step closer, the weight of his presence pressing against mine. What are you? I let the silence linger long enough for the question to settle into the ground between us. Then I answered, soft, deliberate. Not what? Who? His jaw tightened. Fine. Who then? I exhaled, watching my breath cloud in the cold air. I am Roan. And I am also not. Inside me lives something older than your bloodline, older than this cursed wood, a spirit, an omega spirit. His brows furrowed. Confusion flickered, but so did recognition. The pieces were there, waiting to fall. I'm not a pair, I said. My voice was steady, though the words cut through me like ice. I am a trial. An ordeal meant for alphas who think themselves unbreakable. The forest holds me because I hold it. The trees groaned as though echoing my confession. The wind picked up suddenly, tearing through the clearing, rattling the frost from branches. Leaves and ice shards rained down, hissing against the fire's last embers. Corvin braced against the gust but didn't move back. His eyes locked on me, unwavering. "That's why you're sent." His words cut off, realization dawning. I nodded once. Sometimes it slips through. The spirit doesn't let it linger. It bends me, reshapes me. I am a reminder, a test, a warning. To walk beside me is to risk being judged. For a long moment, he said nothing. Just breathed, slow, steady, as though measuring the weight of what I'd given him. Most men would have run by now. Most alphas had. And then he did something no one else had done. He laughed. It startled the forest, startled me. His grin was sharp, teeth flashing against the morning light. "Well, that explains why you smell like 3 different nightmares at once." Against my will, a sound rose in my chest. A laugh, not sharp, not bitter, but real. It slipped past the walls I'd built, warm and dangerous. I hadn't laughed like that in years. The forest stilled. Even it didn't know what to do with the sound. His grin softened as he looked at me. Not pity, not fear, something steadier. Something I hadn't expected to see. But I couldn't let him think it was simple. I stepped closer, the frost crunching underfoot, and let my gaze hold his. "Many alphas tried before you. They wanted the strength the forest promised. They wanted the power of surviving me. Most didn't make it out alive." His expression didn't falter. If anything, it sharpened. "And you think that will scare me off?" His voice was low, steady, almost amused. "It should," I said. He tilted his head, eyes glinting. "Good thing I'm more stubborn than most." The wind stirred again, wrapping us both in its cold embrace. I should have felt relief that he wasn't running. But instead I felt something heavier. Hope. A dangerous, fragile thing. Because maybe, for the first time, an alpha had stepped into the forest and refused to look away. The forest led us deeper than most dared to walk. The air grew denser, thick with resin, and the musk of roots sunk centuries deep. At last, we reached the altar. It wasn't built by human hands. The stone jutted from the earth like the spine of some buried beast, its surface, carved with grooves too precise to be accident, too weathered to be recent. Roots coiled around it, binding and framing the symbols cut into its skin. Fire, water, blood, the old triad, spiraled into a circle wide enough for 2 men to stand within. Corvin eyed it, his jaw tight. "This is where you test alphas?" "No," I said. My voice carried quieter than usual because here quiet was demanded. "This is where the spirit tests them. I'm only the vessel." He shot me a look, 1 part frustration, 1 part resignation. "You could have said that before dragging me half a day through cursed woods." I smirked. "You'd have turned back." He snorted, shifting the weight of his pack. "Not a chance." The ground hummed faintly beneath us, a pulse that was not mine and not his. The forest was waiting. I stepped closer to him. Too close. The air between us thinned. "Listen carefully. The ritual requires 3 things: fire, water, blood. Each one will resist you. You must not resist back. You meet it, you endure it. If you break, the spirit will swallow you whole." "And if I don't break?" His tone was dry, but I caught the gleam in his eyes. "Then you'll have earned more than survival." He studied me for a long moment, then exhaled, steady. "Fine. Tell me what to do." I crouched to strike flint, sparks leaping into the dry moss. The fire caught reluctantly, a circle of orange against the gray-green shadows. Then I pulled a leather flask from my belt and poured water across the carved channels, watching it weave the spiral. Last came the knife, a small curved blade I had carried longer than I remembered. I held it out. He took it without question, his fingers brushing mine. The contact lingered half a breath too long, heat crawling up my skin. When he cut his palm and let the blood drip into the grooves, the altar came alive. The spiral flared red, hissing as fire and water mingled with blood. The forest roared awake around us. Wind tore through the clearing, snapping branches, scattering leaves. The ground shook underfoot, and shadows surged high, writhing against the firelight. Corvin staggered once, bracing against the pull. But he didn't fall. I circled him, guiding his movements, our steps falling into rhythm. His breath synced with mine, sharp but steady. The ritual was never meant to be graceful. Yet somehow we moved as though we had trained. For this, each shift of weight mirrored, each turn of the circle bound by the same thread. The spirit pressed harder. Fire surged higher, water lashed back in steam, the smell of iron filling the air. The roots writhed, snapping toward him like serpents. One coiled tight around his ankle, dragging him down. He growled, not human, not wolf, but something raw, and ripped against it. No. I snapped, stepping close, pressing my palm to his chest. Don't fight. Endure. His eyes burned into mine, sweat slick across his brow. My hand felt the thunder of his heart. I could feel the spirit pressing through him, testing, clawing for weakness. And still, he stood. The roots loosened. The shadows faltered. Fire steadied to a steady, low burn. He panted, teeth bared in something between pain and defiance. Didn't think exams would come back to haunt me at 34. A startled laugh broke from me. Too real, too unguarded. You're passing, barely. His lips twitched, even as he trembled with the effort to stay upright. The forest howled one last time, then fell silent. The wind ceased. The shadows drew back. The spiral on the stone dimmed, leaving only the faint shimmer of blood dried black against the grooves. Accepted. I swayed, my strength bleeding out with the ritual. The spirit had demanded much, through me, always through me. My legs gave way, and before I hit the ground his arms closed around me. Strong, steady, unyielding. For a moment my head rested against his chest, the hammer of his heart steady in my ear. The heat of him seeped into me, different from the fire, different from the spirit. Human, raw, alive. I let myself stay there longer than I should have. Because for the first time the forest had chosen someone who hadn't broken. And for the first time I wasn't carrying its weight alone. Dawn broke differently that morning. The forest had shed its shadows, if only for a moment. Frost glistened on the grass, catching the first rays of sun, turning the ground into a bed of tiny stars. The air was sharp, clean, as though the night's ordeal had wrung the poison out of it. For once the trees stood still. No whispers curling between their branches. It was almost peaceful. Almost. I lay slumped against a root, my limbs leaden, my chest hollowed out. The ritual had drained me as it always did, but worse this time. The spirit inside me had clawed deep, demanding proof, pushing until my body gave in. I would have collapsed into the soil if not for him. Corvin knelt by my side, his big hands uncharacteristically gentle as he steadied me. His pack was open, its contents scattered, bread torn into pieces, a skin of water, a cloth he used to wipe the sweat from my brow. You're pale, he muttered. I managed a crooked smile. Pale is my natural charm. His jaw tightened, but the corner of his mouth betrayed him, tugging upward despite himself. You shouldn't joke. Not after that. If I stopped joking, I whispered, voice scratchy. Then you should start worrying. He tore the bread, held a piece up to my lips. I should have refused. I hated being tended to. But something in his eyes silenced the protest before it formed. I let him feed me. Let the water touch my lips, cold and grounding. Every motion was too intimate for the silence that wrapped us. The forest seemed to watch with its breath held. When I'd eaten enough to keep from fainting, he sat back on his heels. His gaze didn't stray from me, not once. It was heavy, searching, like he was trying to decide if I was going to dissolve into mist before his eyes. Finally, he spoke, low. I'm not afraid of the forest, not of the spirit. But I am afraid of one thing. I tilted my head. And what's that? He hesitated, then admitted, losing myself. In a bond, in a mark. I've seen it happen. Alphas, omegas, they disappear into each other. And when it breaks, there's nothing left. His voice cracked at the edges, rougher than usual. I studied him, the weight of his honesty pressing between us. Then I said, softly but firm, if you choose for yourself, there's nothing to lose. You're not erased by what you want. You're defined by it. He looked at me like I'd said something sacrilegious, something impossible, and yet it hit him anyway. The lines of his face softened, just barely. Easy for you to say, he muttered. Harder than you think, I replied. My smile was faint but real. But I've lived enough years with something else choosing for me. Believe me, choosing yourself is the only freedom left. Silence stretched, thick with everything unsaid. His eyes lingered on my lips, and I realized how close we were. His breath brushed my cheek, warm against the chill air. My own breath caught. For once, I didn't smirk, didn't deflect. I just let the moment stand, our foreheads almost touching, the air between us heavy and fragile. It would have taken nothing. A tilt forward, and his mouth would be on mine. Instead, he laughed under his breath, breaking the tension like glass. "You're trouble, Rohan." I huffed a laugh too, quiet and shaky. "And you're late to notice." The forest didn't whisper. It didn't mock. It simply let us sit there, pressed into a moment too delicate to shatter. Finally he shifted, rising to his feet. He offered his hand to me. Strong, steady. "Come on," he said. "We're leaving." "Leaving?" My voice was hoarse. "Yes." His grip tightened as he pulled me upright. "The forest has had enough of us. And I've had enough of it." I swayed, but his arm caught me before I stumbled. For a second, I leaned into him, breathing in the sharp pine and iron scent that was his alone. The scent that had tangled with mine since the moment we met. Leaving. Together. It sounded too much like hope. And yet, with his hand warm around mine, for the first time I didn't feel like the forest would drag me back. The village looked smaller when we returned. Maybe it was the forest still clinging to my skin, the ritual's weight still humming under my ribs. Maybe it was the way the people stared, shutters open now, faces pressed against windows, as if they'd never expected to see us again. They hadn't. 2 men entered the cursed wood. 2 men walked back. That alone was enough to shake them. We crossed the crooked bridge over the stream, boots loud on the warped planks. The morning sun painted everything in brittle light, roofs, fences, pale smoke trailing from chimneys. The villagers gathered, their whispers a tide. "It's them." They came back. Alive. Their eyes fixed on me first, as always. I felt the prickle of it across my skin. The wariness, the fear. But then something shifted. Their nostrils flared, confusion flickered. They smelled it, the difference. Because my scent wasn't mine alone anymore. It tangled with his. Pine and iron braided into the wild, flickering pull of Omega that had once slipped and vanished like smoke. Now it was steady, anchored, fused. Not a bond carved on flesh. Something deeper. Corvin noticed it too. His glance slid toward me, quick, questioning, but I only smirked, let him puzzle it out. The villagers shrank back as we passed, crossing themselves with charms, muttering old words. But they didn't stop us, not this time. Not when the forest had released us, marked us with something even they couldn't name. We reached the square where he had first stepped off the wagon days ago. Joran, the oldest of them all, was waiting. His cane dug into the earth, his shoulders hunched, but his eyes burned sharp. "You shouldn't be here," Joran rasped. "The forest doesn't give back what it takes." Corvin met his gaze without flinching. "Then maybe it never truly had us." Joran spat into the dirt. His hand trembled around his cane. "You don't know what you carry." I stepped forward, close enough for him to smell the truth in me. His face drained of color, his lips working soundlessly. I didn't need to say anything. The forest had already spoken through me. We walked on, past him, past all of them. The path out of the village stretched wide and open. For once, it didn't feel like a cage. I didn't look back. Neither did Corvin. The weight of the forest remained in my chest. But it was different now. Lighter. Shared. For years I had been a vessel, a trial for others, carrying a spirit that consumed every alpha foolish enough to reach for it. But Corvin hadn't reached. He had stood. Endured. Chosen. And I, against everything I had believed, I chose too. We weren't bound by teeth or ink, not by scars branded into skin. The forest had seen to that. What tied us was older than ritual, stronger than blood. We are not bound by flesh. We are bound by choice. At the edge of the road, he slowed just enough for his shoulder to brush mine. A simple thing, but it grounded me more than any mark ever could. For a while, we walked in silence, the sound of our steps steady in unison. The forest's whispers had faded, but the echo of them lingered in my head, quieter now. Not chains. Not threats. Almost blessings. Corvin broke the silence at last, his tone dry as tinder. "So, this is it. I'm stuck with you. And your sarcasm, forever." I glanced sideways, lips curving. "Forever's a long word. Let's just call it the next trial." He barked a laugh, the sound bright against the morning air. "My trial, huh?" I met his eyes, steady, unflinching. "Your trial isn't over yet." He shook his head, muttering something about impossible omegas, but his smile lingered, stubborn as the man himself. We didn't need to say it. The forest had already sealed it. This was no mark on skin. This was soul.